what you need to understand.
What do they
is
not
that
understand?
the Bush crime family, the Bushes go way back. All right.
How far?
The Bushes, literally, Prescott Bush was funding Hitler. This is George Bush's great grandfather was one of the main financiers of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. And there's a massive amount of literature. If you have any doubt that this is true, okay, you can find, there's a great book by Roger Stone called The Bush Crime Family. This is well documented. Okay. It's America's dirty little secret. Believers versus Skeptics, episode 4. We have a special episode lined up for you guys tonight. We're going to be debating and talking about the events of 9/11. That's right, 9/11. And I'm joined by my incredibly worthy and good-looking adversary, Nick Lerman.
Thank you, everyone. What's up? How have you been? In honor of today's event, Faust is going to talk about how our country fucked us. So I had to wear this commemorative shirt. Everybody, if it's a sensitive topic, 9/11. So if this is close to your heart, just know that in this episode, Faust is going to insult your very being and everything you stand for, everything you love. I want you to take his dark lies to heart, his need to enrage you.
That's nonsense.
Let me hear about it in the comment section.
So first of all, I'm not going to do anything of this sort.
It's the context.
Not at all. I in fact, I have no problem with this, my country or anything of the sort. But
not according to your Facebook posts.
What? No, I mean, there's a difference between the people in this country and some of the people who are trying to run it into the ground. There's a huge difference. But that being said, everybody knows what's been said about 9/11, the official story that we've been told, and the book has been closed on it. Incredibly, is that there was a terrorist attack on 9/11. It was the worst terrorist attack in the history of the United States on our soil, and that a bunch of planes were hijacked by I think it was officially 19 hijackers from 19 terrorists from the Middle East. So it turns out that there was a elevator restoration campaign that went on for I think 9 months before the trade centers came down, and witnesses describe those elevator shafts being guarded at gunpoint while they were being worked on for 9 months.
What is serious about the products?
And so that's incredibly. But then who's in charge of security? I mean,
Otis.
Who's in charge of? Isn't the person in charge of the World Trade Center supposed to be securing it from things like, I don't know, this massive setup? Oh, well, there was a company in charge of the World Trade that had the contract to be in charge of the World Trade Center security, and the name of that company was it's called Stratosec. Or Securicom.
We're getting into
we should get into the Bushes and the Bin Ladens, right? Because they obviously have something to do with this, right?
Let's get into Marvin. Come on. Tell me about Marvin.
He just told you who was in charge of security. George Bush's little brother, Marvin Bush. Marvin Pierce Bush was a principal in charge of Securicom, now called Stratosec, from 1996 to 2000. He was in charge of security for all the World Trade Center buildings. Do you know what else Stratosec had the contracts on?
What else?
a little weapons explosive manufacturer called Los Alamos, who was known for their incredible explosive devices. And also, coincidentally, Dulles Airport in Dallas, United Airlines, and a few other highly convenient and suspicious places that you would have really needed to be able to manipulate to pull something like this off. Okay.
It was American airline flights who crashed. United.
Yeah, it was also them. Probably one of them left out of Dulles Airport in Dallas. Anyway, but let's get into what you need to understand.
What do they not
understand? The Bush crime family, the Bushes go way back. All right.
How far?
The Bushes, literally, Prescott Bush was funding Hitler. This is George Bush's great grandfather was one of the main financiers of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. And there's a massive amount of literature. If you have any doubt that this is true, okay, you can find, there's a great book by Roger Stone called The Bush Crime Family. This is well documented. Okay. It's America's dirty little secret. We were funding the Nazis.
An author who lies while drunk writing.
And that's sad, but that's Wall Street. It's true. So I just want to show you this little clip. Included in this clip is this phenomenal little coup d'etat that was attempted in 1934 that nobody talks about, nobody knows about, but was funded by the billionaire class of America that wanted then in 1934 what it still wants today, a fascist takeover of our government. They've been doing the same thing for fucking, I don't know, 1934, what, 90 years now? 90 years. Okay.
I haven't been doing anything in my book.
So check this out. This is crazy. This is fucking crazy.
The reality of the situation prevailing at that time can be very easily understood simply by looking at the cover of Fritz Thiesen's book, I Paid Hitler, on which he is depicted as a puppet master controlling Hitler's strings. Thiesen was a billionaire industrialist. He was the man who built the Bismarck. His company, United Steelworks, made 3/4 of all Germany's steel, and he joined together with Skull and Bones members Prescott Bush and George Herbert Walker
Sound familiar?
to financially assist the Nazi Party. Together they recruited head of the German central bank Hjalmar Schacht to the fascist cause, and then combined with other leading industrialists to sign the letter which convinced Hindenburg to appoint Hitler as Chancellor on the 20th of February 1933.
They got him elected.
Had anyone inquired around this time about the postal address of the Nazi Party, they could legitimately have been told that it was 39
right here,
Broadway,
baby.
Manhattan, New York, because this was where Averell Harriman, Prescott Bush and George Herbert Walker kept their office. And being no fool, fascist Germany, and this prevailing sentiment amongst the world's ruling
what they
class
tried.
led America's elite to attempt a fascist coup d'etat in 1934. I hope it will be plain to people by now that Hitler's economic miracle is the greatest myth in human history. There was no economic miracle. There are no miracles.
Sounds like
and
you,
if
Nick.
there are, why can't the Germans do it all again now?
It doesn't.
If you want to
I only
construct a
speak
network
facts.
of new roads and new steelworks and new factories, you need one thing: money.
Cash.
You need investment. And the investment didn't come from Hitler. It came from Brown Brothers Harriman and their business associate, Fritz Thyssen. It came from Hjalmar Schacht and his best friend, Sir
Came
Montague
from
Colin
Prescott
Norman.
Bush and Harriman. They were
It
in
came
business.
from
Make up
men
stories.
like Axel Wenner-Gren, the Swedish multimillionaire arms manufacturer, and Charles Beddoes, the French business mogul. These people were all in the same bed with their Nazi
Now listen to
friends,
what they did.
the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, the Dulles brothers, Prescott Sheldon Bush, and George Herbert Walker, with whom they created the Union Bank
Loosely.
for laundering Nazi money.
They
And
didn't
with stage
create
one of their
anything
plan
with
for
them.
world domination complete,
Listen.
they now turn to the second phase, which was meant to
Listen to
be
what they
the
tried to
overthrow
do.
of American democracy and the imposition of fascist
No.
government upon the United States.
Listen to this.
In order to pull this off, these Nazis raised money from America's richest families, many of whom, in this new consumerist society, had become household names.
Okay,
The Colgate
sure.
family,
Colgate
the
family.
Birdseye family, the DuPont
Sure.
family, the
DuPont.
Rockefeller family.
Rockefeller.
These people handed over millions to the American financiers of Hitler so they could hire, train and supply a private army which would attempt to overthrow the democratically elected government of Franklin Delano Roosevelt and impose fascist dictatorship in America. Of course, it's natural to wonder, considering they had such advantages, how on earth they failed to pull it off. The simple answer is that they chose the wrong man, because their choice to lead this Nazi insurrection was Major General Smedley Darlington Butler, the most decorated soldier of the period and in all of American history, perhaps the most unsung hero of all. Because Smedley Butler was the most genuine Democrat and lover of liberty the world has ever seen.
This is him.
I appeared before the Congressional Committee, the highest representation of the American people, under subpoena to tell what I knew of activities which I believe might lead to an attempt to set up a fascist dictatorship. The plan as outlined to me was to form an organization of veterans, to use as a bluff, or as a club at least, to intimidate the government and break down our democratic institutions. The upshot of the whole thing was that I was supposed to lead an organization of 500,000 men, which would be able to take over the functions of government. My main interest in all this is to preserve our democratic institutions. I want to retain the right to vote, the right to speak freely,
God bless him,
and the right to write. If we maintain these basic principles, our democracy is safe. No dictatorship can exist with suffrage, freedom of speech, and press.
Amen.
I don't know how we're here at Bush's grandfather was a Nazi sympathizer.
Listen, I want you to understand who we are talking about when we talk about the Bushes.
I know.
George W. Bush was indoctrinated by his father, who was indoctrinated by his father. These people don't care about you. They're fucking warmongers. They tried to pay a fucking general to take 50,000 men and overthrow the president of the United States and take over the government. They tried to do that. And this goes to show you, even back then, you just heard it, all those families.
No, but I mean, that's just some guy saying it. Yeah, sure.
What do you mean? He was in front. You just heard his testimony in front of Congress.
His testimony,
all the details came out. He told Nick, he ratted on all of them. He told on all of them. He was not who he let them. And
nobody believed them, and none of them were charged. And
no, they were. Listen to me.
Go ahead.
This is how fucking bad it is and has always been since there was a billionaire class in the United States. Okay. Eisenhower found out about this plot, about the fact that we were funding the Nazis. Man, he could have put them all in jail for treason. He could have seized their assets.
No, he couldn't. There was no treason.
There was absolutely treason. They were funding the slaughter of 6 million people.
Of course, but there's one guy, Fritz Thyssen. Nobody else is involved. There's no greater.
You just heard listen, there's a great documentary. I'm going to include a link to it in the video description. It's where this excerpt is from, that video clip I just showed you. It's called Everything is a Rich Man's Trick, or Every War is a Rich Man's Trick, something like that. It's a fantastic documentary. If you want to understand if you really want to understand American history, you got to watch this documentary. But if I
go in front of the Supreme Court and say I'm a piece of broccoli, that doesn't make me a piece of broccoli. That just makes me crazy.
Well, today,
and that's what this guy is.
What guy?
The guy who you're saying, he said it, so it's fact. No, he's just the lunatic.
He's talking about, listen, there's a massive amount of literature you can read. It's well documented that Prescott Bush and Harriman, among many other millionaires, were funding Adolf Hitler right up until the time they weren't allowed to anymore. Then we froze their assets, and after the war was over, we gave it back, because that's what we do to billionaires in this country. We treat them very, very well.
And to clarify, you're saying this is more of an association here than them being involved in a hedge fund.
I'm saying
single investor investing in
the link lies in the fascist dictatorship, in the overthrow of the democracy and the installation of a fascist dictatorship
funded by one guy. You
cannot achieve that. So what have we come closer to since 9/11? We've come closer to a police, a nanny state. The Patriot Act, what they put forth with this single act of destruction, whittled away at 100 years of constitutional rights. And to this day, it's never been given back. To this day, they still have the right to seize and listen to anything they want, thanks to the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act checked a lot of boxes. In fact, if you go back and you want to look at it, you'll find that most crises, most catastrophic events that we have suffered through have checked a lot of boxes for these people, and they were all orchestrated by the same people, in fact.
And if you want to not live your life,
in theory, anyway,
if you want to not live your life based on assumptions, you can just tune into the fact
you could just listen to the media.
That there was one guy here who bought a hedge fund's investment, and the hedge fund did well, so he made money and he financed Hitler.
Yeah, it turns out slave labor, ask China, it really works. And the Jews in Germany were being used in slave labor for the industrialists, for the fucking millionaires sending them money. It was win-win-win for them. Anyway,
wait, Faust.
I just wanted to make this point because because in order to wrap your mind around how this could have happened, who could have planned it, you got to understand the kind of families involved in something this colossal, and how really big they are, and how powerful they are, and how long they've been manipulating world events.
No, they're just a long time,
and it's the same fucking families, and it's not a coincidence. So that being said, let's talk about the Bin Ladens and their relationship to the Bushes, because while we're on the topic, in 1976, Osama's older brother, Salim bin Laden, hired a man in Texas by the name of Jim Bath to handle all of his investments in the United States for the bin Laden family. Jim Bath also happens to be a personal, almost lifelong friend of and former Air National Guard pilot George W. Bush. Yeah. Now, the connections between the Bushes and the bin Ladens become even clearer when you look at the documents and paper trail that showed George Herbert Walker making trips to Saudi Arabia in 1998 and 2000 to meet directly with the bin Laden family on behalf of a company called the Carlyle Group. If you want to continue down the rabbit hole, look up the Carlyle Group and what they do, and you'll find a lot of very close similarities between what the Harriman brothers were doing way back in the 1930s. Okay. So you have the Bushes all over this. Okay. Now, why did George Bush on January in 2001 issue a document, which is verifiable? When you make a blanket statement like this, the president does, there are records to prove it. Okay. Made a blanket order to all the intelligence agencies to back off all investigations dealing with the bin Ladens in January of 2001. He made that statement, and that was including the bin Laden relatives who were living right there in CIA headquarters in Falls Church, Virginia. Back off, he said. And they did. Why did he do that? Why?
Bin Laden at the time is suspected to be a key figure in Al-Qaeda, a growing terrorist group that's pretty much like they're like the hot shit terrorist group that's rising up. Bin Laden's a key figure. He said that because they hadn't committed a crime yet, and you're not allowed to. So no, Faust, for real though, just think about like foreign affairs.
Dude.
Wait, hold on, just listen. If to target bin Laden means you have to actually enter the country and target him, the country itself or this person has to do something so bad to you that you get the entire world to go like, yeah, they're going to go in there and they're going to get that guy. And to your credit, sure, that's a perfect setup for a false flag operation to get into Afghanistan. You're right. But coincidentally, like, this person ends up being a really bad person who ends up planning this really big attack, causing this invasion. And that's just what happened. But until he did, they weren't allowed to go into Afghanistan. They weren't allowed to go into Saudi Arabia.
What do you mean they weren't? They did.
But okay, yes, yeah, 100%. You're right. Spies, covert agents, they're not allowed to actually
CNN
an operation. You're right.
CNN.
No, CNN, but that's different. What I'm saying is like your government isn't allowed to execute an operation with guns and bombs.
Listen,
and
when you're on the list,
yeah,
there's ongoing investigations of
sure.
you know. I mean, that's
and when
how
you
the
commit a real
FBI
crime, then they can get you. So
no shit.
Bush was just saying
Bin
like,
Laden,
yo, back off. He hasn't done shit.
The Bin Ladens, and specifically Osama bin Laden, had been on the most wanted list for years before 9/11. Okay, years.
It wasn't like the most wanted list. It wasn't. It was more just like the up. It's like the XXL magazine for terrorists. That's the best analogy.
Speaking of,
like, these are the up and comers who are about to pop off, but they haven't yet.
Just a few more crazy coincidences for you that I learned in the last few days.
Please enlighten me.
There was a third building that collapsed. About 8 hours later, that a lot of people don't even know about, partially because it collapsed 8 hours later, and partially because it collapsed basically inexplicably. And that was building number 7. So when you see the memes, you know, and people are like, you know, I refuse to believe 2 planes knocked down 3 buildings, and you know, you see a lot of like references to it. Some people are like, what the fuck are they talking about?
Call them uneducated.
They're talking about the third building, building number 7, a huge building by any measure, but next to the World Trade Center, not quite as big. That came down, I think the official time was 5:20 p.m.
Correct.
It was never actually hit by a plane, but found a way to come down at breakneck speeds at 5:20 p.m. And as I'll show you,
as I will show you,
and I'll show you how that was very much anticipated and reported on by the media and planned, and that there were people who were in New York that had been told all day that building number 7 was going to come down. Even though
I will model the physics for you.
You'll model something. That's all right.
Behind it, the thermoregulatory forces in action. You're gonna understand it today. Welcome to science class.
Yeah, you are going to understand a lot about science today. That is for sure. But first, a little bit of science. You know, like just to set the stage. Now that we've talked about the 3 buildings that collapsed, the 3 steel buildings that collapsed. I want to share my screen with you.
We had the Pentagon too. Don't forget about that.
That didn't collapse.
Okay, fine. You're right. Just
yeah. Okay. But we're talking about the skyscrapers. But so I'm going to share my screen real quick. I think
share it.
You can edit around.
We can see the lies.
According to a 2011 report by the National Fire Protection Association, there are an average of 110 fires each year in buildings over 13 stories tall. According to the report, between 2005 and 2009, there were 550 high-rise fires. Of course, there are many more all throughout history, but let's talk about some of the more startling ones. Sao Paulo, Brazil, the Joelma building, 1974. Sparked by an electrical fire, the residential building burned twice as long as the Twin Towers, yet it stood. The underlying structure wasn't even weakened. In fact, it's still in use today. The MGM Grand, which is now Bally's in Las Vegas, Nevada, caught fire in 1980, killing 85 people. It's had a few facelifts and ownership changes, but the structure underneath was never compromised. It's still in use today. Los Angeles, California, 1988. What was then called the First Interstate Bank building burned for 3.5 hours. No structural failure at all. In fact, an insurance company moved in, and today it's known as the Aon Center. In 2004, the Parque Central building in Caracas, Venezuela, the country's tallest building, burned for 17 hours.
17 hours?
The facade was repaired, and it is in use today.
Look at that.
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, One Meridian Plaza, 1991, burned for 18 hours.
18 hours?
It stood. Beijing, China, the Mandarin Oriental Hotel, burned for 6 hours in 2009. It stood. Cheney's tallest building burned for 7 hours.
Holy shit, that whole building is on fire and it didn't fall.
It stood. Dubai, Moscow, Zurich, and on and on. I was starting to see a trend. Fires don't melt steel or cause buildings to collapse. The World Trade Center has itself...
Fires don't melt steel or cause buildings to collapse.
All right,
Fact. of physics.
No.
Wait,
Okay.
but
So
before we
this is the
hold that
great-
thought, Nick,
Go ahead.
I want to say one thing that I meant to say before.
Yes. Enlighten me.
I wanted to start with this. I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge everybody who lost a loved one on that day, and everyone who lost a loved one because of the events that unfolded on that day. I don't wish to be or seem insensitive to what happened on that day. That's not what this show is about. In fact, this is about respecting what happened on that day and taking a look at it from every perspective, because a lot of things that happen don't add up. And the other thing I want to say is the people who have gone down this rabbit hole are brave hearts. They are tremendous. And I am truly just bringing information that they have put together to you. And I just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge all the people that have, really put this all together in incredible ways. You just heard the voice of David Hooper. He had this incredible documentary called Anatomy of a Great Deception, which that video is from. And now, that's a mind-blowing documentary. I'm going to include it in the video link. So Nick, go ahead and say what you were saying. I just wanted to say that because I forgot to say it when we started.
So let's take let me start with this.
Yeah.
I want to applaud David Hooper for just pointing out a bunch of random buildings that don't matter.
Skyscraper.
I could do the exact same thing. Like we can go in a school and we can be like, okay, this teacher right here isn't a pedophile. This teacher isn't a pedophile. This teacher isn't a pedophile. So this one, it can't be a pedophile either. And then he turns out to be a pedophile. That's what's going on here. No, I know. Okay, that was a weird metaphor,
I'm still trying to make sense of it.
So here's what I'm saying. I don't know who this guy is, and every single fire, every single collapse can be treated as a completely separate incident. Because let's call it as such. Like, yeah, he showed us 12 fire. That wasn't even 12. That was like 8 fires.
Well, he showed you some of the biggest ever documented.
The biggest. Okay, let's just. What if someone wasted the time to make a video about the other 999,999,999 fires that happened?
Okay, but we're talking about skyscrapers, Nick.
I know. So let's get into the matter at hand then. When we're talking about the fire specifically, right? So let's take the 2 big towers out of the picture just for a moment. We'll get back to that. World Trade Building number 7.
Yeah.
That building came down allegedly. Like you'll see a photo on the web as the big towers fell. It wasn't hit by anything because they had fallen more or less straight, and there's like a cloud of smoke and you see this building. So essentially you're wondering, okay, how could this building have come down? Could a bunch of fire have caused it? Yeah, it could have. So let's start with the fact that building had 15,000 gallons of biodiesel fuel underneath for their backup generators. That caught fire, and that this is true in building number 7.
Okay, even if it did have that much fuel.
So I'm told, I did some digging into this. Apparently the fuel more or less doesn't matter. In my head, I was like, boom, explosion. No, it kind of like spread this fire, but the fuel doesn't burn hot enough to really matter. But here's what happened. I'm glad
you admit that.
As funny as it is, though, Faust, the thing that caused the fire was just paper and furniture. Right? It sounds kind of crazy. Let me tell you. It does sound crazy. This building was obviously also made with some steel beams. So yeah, like obviously it's not gonna melt and all this, but here's exactly what happened. At about 570 degrees Fahrenheit is the heat of a normal fire. That's like the average fire.
Well, yeah, but an average fire can get a lot hotter than 570.
It can. So it can go up to about 1,100 degrees. And then when we start passing that, we get into that jet fuel burning threshold. But there was no jet fuel on building 7. Did it like leak down from the other buildings? Probably not. But what happens to steel beams, specifically with the way this building was built, is under about 570 degree heat. We're going to assume the average here. Thermal expansion happens. And as the steel beams expand, they're not expanding like this. That was an exaggeration. They're expanding like tiny, tiny bit, which starts loosening all the bolts. Now, specifically here, I actually have the exact bolt here, Faust. I prepared this for you. Are you ready?
This is the
bolts between columns 79 and 44 gave way under the pressure of expansion, causing the divot where all the weight of the building was.
Nick.
Just listen. On floor 13 to give way. I don't want to waste our time with videos. If anybody looks at the video, you'll see the 13th floor giving way because that's the structural point of the building where all the pressure was built up on. I'm going to show you guys a model later on. I'll just link it in the comments. We don't even need to look at it.
Even if
it just shows, just listen, Faust.
I'm listening.
It showed that this divot that broke caused an outward shock wave that collapsed the other steel beams. And this was all just caused by it getting hot and some bolts loosening. Because that pressure collapsed under itself. But you know what? It doesn't even matter. The building was empty.
The building was empty because they knew it was coming down. They knew it was coming down, which I'll show you.
What were they trying to hide?
Oh, I don't know. But there was a lot of offices in that building. They were more than happy to do away with. The CIA had an office in that building. The FBI had an office in that building. There was about 10 or 12 highly suspicious office. A lot of data storage. It was it was very, very convenient. That building had to come down anyway.
No, wait. Not anyway. But here's the key point. Why did they want it to come down? It did have all of these agencies, all of these floors.
It had to come down.
Because
it was always planned to come down.
Because
the media had word, even though no skyscraper made of steel had ever burned down from a fire, even though
it's not a skyscraper.
In the history of mankind, no skyscraper has ever fallen or burned down. No steel skyscraper ever has.
Fact check.
They somehow they knew building 7 was going to come down. They knew hours before it did because they kept insisting people get the fuck away from it. And
it's on fire and it's breaking apart. And
listen,
2 towers fell.
People were reporting in front of the World Trade Center right up until it was crumbling at free fall speed. Okay.
Yeah.
And even if what you said,
like, hey, this shit is on fire. It's about to fall.
You remember seeing all the people running from the fires because you could stand in front of a burning skyscraper and no one worried about it ever coming down because it had never happened before. And because physically people have a good sense that is impossible. And in fact, it is impossible. And your theory is complete and utter dog shit because even if what you said had any water and was anything but a cockamamie fucking theory that bolts could somehow be loosened by the millimeter expansion of steel, which is only being heated in certain places. The fires in the World Trade Center building number 7, how did they even start, Nick? How did they even fucking start?
What do you mean? The fires?
Yeah. The building wasn't hit by a plane. How did it get on fire?
From the other buildings.
Magic?
No, from the other buildings.
Oh, what?
Just burning debris.
Oh, Nick.
It's an empty building. What's going to happen if just a tiny bit of burning debris from a giant
huge empty steel building? There is no debris that could spill into World Trade Center building number 7 that would cause it to collapse at a free fall speed. Listen,
you're very passionate about that, but we're talking about 2 airplanes hitting buildings which are on fire,
and they didn't hit number 7.
Like flames bursting out of them,
First of all,
burning people landing on this building, and you're saying that not a bit of it could catch fire? Because all it takes.
I'm saying that even if building 7 somehow magically caught fire from the explosions that happened in the other buildings, if it somehow caught fire, they could have easily put it out. And
no one was in there.
No one was in there because they cleared it the fuck out. Why wouldn't they be able to put it out?
Well, okay, here's the logic.
But listen, I want to address your point about the bolts. Okay. So even if what Nick was saying wasn't just some bullshit theory made up by a paid off fucking MIT scientist, even if it had water in true physics, which it doesn't, because those steel beams would have only been able to get hot enough at certain points in the building. That whole building was never on fire. There was only a few floors on fire.
Yeah,
the whole building. You saw pictures of that building, and I'll show you more of them.
No, you're right.
It never looked like the infernos that you just saw in those in that video I just showed you. It never looked like that. The whole thing was never engulfed. So therefore, my point is this: even if what Nick was saying about the bolts was true, that would never, ever, not in a million fucking years, be enough to cause a collapse, a structural inward collapse. Okay. The building might begin to, if it was like really shoddy made of like fucking cardboard and wood, it would begin to topple where it was weakened, but you would never have a free fall collapse of a building based on some nuts and bolts that may or may not have been fucking weakened. And it's literally preposterous to believe that that building, which was literally like a linebacker of a building, would have come down. It's insane to even contemplate that. But I understand that the alternative is even worse to contemplate for some people.
No, it's not even that. It's just that everything you said is wrong if you take physics and just basic physics into
let's
account.
Talk physics then. Okay.
Wait. Before that, just really quick. Let's take other like technological, architectural innovations that were said to be like indestructible, like works of art. Let's say the Titanic. Oh, we're never gonna sink. We're impenetrable. Boom, iceberg down. The Hindenburg were an awesome blimp. Boom, caught on fire. You know,
fucking terrible idea.
That it's crazy. But moving on, it's
fucking
just
giant
like,
floating flammable bomb. I mean, that was the worst idea ever.
Right, but
these buildings were not that.
If you actually look into the blueprint of this building, I can pull it up. It's just like, I'll link it in the comments. Reason being is I can't even understand exactly looking at it, but I read a bunch of articles on basically what the issue here was. Now, the issue essentially was all of the structural integrity and is pretty much on one beam holding. If that beam were to break, the building falls. This is true for a lot of buildings. This is honestly like basic physics. And the point here is
it's basic demolition is what it is.
Basic demolition.
Yeah, it's basic controlled demolition is what it is. You crimp the middle of the building out. You can get the collapse in on itself. It's the only way it happens.
Okay, let's move on then from the science and get into the demolition.
No. Wait, before we do, let's just explain this to me then. How does this happen?
Please.
They said, hey, you got to stay behind this line because they're thinking about taking this building down. They're not sure if it's stable or not. So they were holding a line off because they had knowledge that something was going to happen.
That by noon or 1 o'clock, they told us we had to move from that triage site up to Pace University, a little further away, because Building 7 was going to come down or being brought down.
We know this.
Did they actually use the word brought down, and who was it that was telling you this?
The fire department, and they did use the word. We're going to have to bring it down.
Sure.
You hear that?
Keep your eye on that building.
Keep your eye on that building, he said.
I didn't hear any creaking, or I didn't hear any indication that it was going to come down. And
yeah, because
all of a sudden the radios exploded and everybody started screaming.
Oh look, there's the building.
Look, it happened quickly.
Free fall speed.
So
because of the structural fault.
I think I know an explosion when I hear it.
We are on the phone with New York Fire Department Lieutenant David Restuccio. Can you confirm it was number 7 that just went in?
$20.
Yes, sir.
And you guys knew this was coming all day.
We had heard
Where is he?
latest building
I don't
collapse.
see him
And
talking.
Listen.
you might have heard a few moments ago was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing, and indeed it has. Apparently, that's only a few hundred yards away from
Oh, it
where
hasn't
the
collapsed
World
yet.
Trade Center towers were.
That one of the other buildings.
Oh, look at that. They're an hour early.
In the World Trade Center complex is on
The
fire.
building looks
and
like
has
this.
either collapsed or is
Who's
collapsing.
gonna go
Oh,
near
look, it hasn't collapsed yet, but they're reporting on it an hour early.
Broken out, and a corner of
Because
the building appeared
everyone
to be
is safe
in
inside,
distress.
and they're saying,
there's
"Hey,
concern
don't
that
go
there
in
might
there.
actually be
It's gonna
another
collapse."
Listen.
We just
of
had
that
two
building.
buildings
We are
collapse.
getting word from New York right now that another building has collapsed. Is that smoke coming from?
That's the fucking
this
building right
third
there on the right.
collapse? Okay, that
Has not collapsed
makes
yet.
sense because it looks like the
Yes.
sun is going down.
Because
but
it looks
hoping
like
that enough
that.
people have
Of
cleared
course
out
they're gonna
of downtown
Listen.
Manhattan, so that perhaps it wasn't as full as it might be normally around 5:30 on a Tuesday.
That information.
Oh,
of course, take a look at that
look.
right-hand side of the screen.
It's going
Okay.
down right now.
Oh my God.
Brown building, the tall one, is number 7 World Trade Center. Heard several reports from several different officers
Waiting
now that
for
is the
it
building
to
that is gonna
come
go
down
next.
from a fire in the office.
Dude, it's yeah, okay, sure. Okay. That's
The
called
media
bad
has played
reporting.
I mean,
So, okay. That was stupid. Let's put it this way. If the queen has COVID or some deadly disease and she's on her deathbed, people are going to be reporting the queen is dying. They're not going to say that she's healthy. It's the same case.
Dude.
A building looks, just listen. A building is so destroyed. It has black smoke coming out of it. Everyone inside is evacuated and safe. And you're surprised they're saying this building is collapsing? Of course,
dude, they were saying it was going to collapse
It.
5 hours before it did. It was only on fire for 2 hours. It wasn't
No,
an
it wasn't.
inferno.
No. It was on fire longer than 2 hours.
It could have only been on fire from 9 a.m. from when the first plane hit.
No,
That's
no.
3 hours, Nick. It was noon when they first started reporting it was going to come down. That's 3 hours.
Let's look at this. Okay,
I already
don't
did look it
actually
up.
have the time. It is 2 hours.
Well, if she said
Okay.
starting at noon, then obviously it could have only been from the time the first plane hit. I mean,
So-
we can get into the fact that there was explosions in the buildings way before, even before the plane hit. We'll get into that too. A lot of eyewitness testimony for you. But let's talk about the fire and Nick's theory. Okay, the problem with Nick's theory is that the hottest fire that you can get that is going to remain that orange red color that we all know and love, that we human beings love to roast s'mores on hot dogs over, that's a hydrocarbon fire. Okay, it's maximum temperature. The hottest you can get that color fire is about 1200 degrees. Okay, and that's in a dirty, uncontrolled burn. Pile everything in there. Right, that's a typical campfire. The hottest you're going to get it is 1200 degrees tops. All right. The notion that jet fuel or kerosene in a basement or anything of that nature could have been the cause of the Inferno is complete myth. It's a complete
Wait, what?
myth.
The Inferno?
Because even FEMA, who happened to coincidentally be on the scene September 11th because they were in New York City September
they were
10th
running an operation
for a training
for
exercise. So they were right where they needed to be when needed to be it. Coincidentally.
Jinx.
You know, they said no, absolutely. The jet fuel burned off in the initial explosion. That's what the poof was. That was the jet
I'm
fuel.
confused what you're saying though. Are you saying that it couldn't have caused an
Because
Inferno?
people have this insane notion that somehow like there was jet fuel leaking down into the buildings, that somehow like no, that's not what happened.
That isn't what happened. You're right.
So you're talking about the Twin Towers were not built like a normal skyscraper. Okay, they were literally built to withstand the impact of the biggest plane at that time, which I think was like a 757. Okay,
So they hit it twice.
it like there was these buildings.
Who would have thought?
Were fucking, they were marvels like that. Like if you ever have the time check out the construction on these buildings. They were normal steel skyscrapers are built in a grid that go straight up, basically. And that's all they need. But because the World Trade Centers were so big and tall, they anchored them in with these huge steel columns, and the steel actually got thinner as it went up, and it was all in this awesome net mesh. It was almost like a giant steel mosquito net. Like,
you sound like the ship maker hyping up the Titanic right now.
No, but
we're never gonna get crushed by an iceberg.
This notion that
icebergs, we crush that.
Listen, this notion that a plane could have brought down these buildings is I mean, it's literally it's like fantastical thinking. It's
the notion that the guy who doesn't trust any corporation suddenly trusts an architecture firm not cutting costs and cheapening out on their construction surprises me.
So we have a physics issue here, because steel, while you can heat it, you can get it nice and hot. You really can't melt it until you hit about 2,700 degrees. That speaks to the fact that there was thermite and nano-thermite used in their destruction. Okay. It is the only logical explanation, because they could not. The fires were officially put out on December 13th, 2001. Okay. That was almost 3 months. The longest burning building fire in recorded history. The fires burned for 92 fucking days. Okay. You can ask the NYPD. They sat around trying to put them out, scratching their fucking heads, acting like they don't know what's going on for 92 days. Okay.
Give me just a moment. So let's talk about this thermite thing, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about it.
Let's take the assumption of thermite aside. Let's talk about the presence of thermite at the scene, because there is one very real piece of evidence about thermite being present at the scene. It was a journalist and a scientist named Stephen Jones. When he heard about this, he was already, let me put it this way. He was already in the frame of mind that war behind this, that this was an inside job, or that something fishy happened, when he travels to New York following the collapse of the towers, and he collects 4 samples of thermite. He takes these samples and he puts them under a microscope. He examines them, and sure enough, yeah, it's thermite. And he publicizes this, and now we have everyone talking about thermite. But then we move forward a little bit.
Dude, there's fucking thermite found all over.
No.
It wasn't just thermite. It was nano-thermite. It was beyond any nano-thermite known to man at the time. They knew what it was. It was weapon grade, on hitherto unknown strength used to bring down these buildings.
So I will accept that idea from you if you have even a shred of evidence to back it up. But the only known proven example of thermite that I've seen publicly publicized was Stephen Jones, and he did find 4 samples of thermite. So let me just tell you what happened next. Every scientist comes out and says, hey, Stephen, I know you haven't been doing this for a long time. Just so you know, thermite looks very similar to other metallic ores. It could have easily been mistaken for that. Can we see your data? Stephen says, no, I don't trust scientists.
Probably didn't trust the people asking for it.
He doesn't trust the people asking for it, sure. And he's kept it locked up for the last 20 years with no second opinion. That's the only
he's probably trying to save his own life.
Only public claim of thermite. Maybe there's other people out there. Just show me evidence. If there's thermite, where's the thermite?
The fact is that
I want to.
If there wasn't a conspiracy, we could do something very simple to figure out and put this to bed once and for all. All we would need to do is forensically go back and examine the steel. There's an idea. Let's do that. Oh, wait a minute. The fucking steel went missing. Oh, wait a minute. We sold the steel to China. The steel was illegally excavated. Where's the steel? I don't know. It's fucking gone.
Nobody sold this have destroyed steel to China.
That is a fact.
You swear
That is a
we
fact.
have the first terrorist attack in 60 years on our soil, and the government says, "Hey, quick, sell."
That's right, everybody.
Steel to China.
The
That's
fucking steel was immediately removed from the scene and disposed of. That is a fact that you can look up. Every one of these questions, Nick, that we're having right now could be put to rest with one forensic team investigating that steel. But where is that steel? It's fucking gone. All of it has been disposed of. Why?
So I don't have evidence. Obviously, I haven't looked into the.
Why do you think the steel has not been examined?
So I honestly did not expect you to tell me that someone sold this steel to China, dude, to somehow hide the evidence.
That's what I was told. That's what I read. That not only was it disposed of illegally, but it was shipped to China for disposal, sold to China.
So let me just look at this logic,
which makes sense because China would buy it.
So I can see China buying. No, honestly, I can't see China buying it, but I can see a group of scavengers, a group of economists or entrepreneurs. Wait, I'm giving you credit. I can see that a group of people came in and they're like, "Hey, let's scavenge and try to find value in this moment." That's human nature too, right?
You're talking about the biggest crime scene in the history of mankind right now, and you're talking about more steel than has ever been in a demolition site. All of it gone. Not a single beam to study, because if they could study those beams, they would see quite clearly that they were fucking destructed with Nano-Thermite, military grade Nano-Thermite. Now I'm starting to channel
Why would they have said that?
Well, what do you mean? How else do you get a 110-story building to fall at free fall speed?
Like, how?
Listen,
yeah.
I think everybody needs to understand that when you see a building collapsing on TV, it is being detonated. Okay, that's not how a building falls. The truth is, you could have flown 6-7 planes into each of those towers.
Please,
and you still would have had a building standing. There is no plane margin. Absolutely. That's how well made.
Skyscraper with 4 planes.
When you look at the interlocking construction of the World Trade Center and the steel that they used, they had 47 core columns. Okay. There was no way these buildings were to come down. These core columns were intact.
Give me your pride.
There is no plane. That plane could never have pierced into those columns. Were not going anywhere. Okay, that's steel. And in fact, do you remember the images of what was left of those trade centers? Just the bottom stood. Now, the bottom could not have stood. They never explained how you pancake a building, but the bottom structure remains intact.
Well,
and that's because it was so strong that even the bottom of the buildings withstood the military grade fucking detonations that took place. Okay. Like, that's how incredible these buildings were built. You see the husk of that core still standing at the bottom. And that speaks to the integrity of the whole building, let alone the fact that, there was fires that burned for 3 months afterwards. And so my whole point is, let me just check this out real quick. Hold on.
Faust, just before you say it, a demolition doesn't start from the bottom. If you've ever looked at demolition happen, it goes so just looking at it
but they have to break the middle of the building. They have to break the core, the central pillar.
More or less they did. Like, if we're talking a percentage meter, they hit like the 70% up point. But Faust, going back to what you said earlier, do you honestly think that we're talking video game here, if I give you 7 Boeing 737s, do you think you couldn't bring down the trade center? You said 6 or 7.
Yeah, that's how strong those buildings were. I honestly believe. Listen, you would have had fires. And maybe the building would have ended up looking like a giant inferno, like one of those buildings I showed you. And maybe it would have burned. Maybe it would have burned for a day, 2 days. Maybe, just maybe, they would have been able to put it out after 3-4 days. But there is no way those buildings would have not remained standing in some way, let alone fell down after 54 minutes. Building 2 fell down after 54 minutes. Building 1 fell down after 90 some minutes. Okay. Those buildings collapsed in on themselves and fell under 10 seconds at free fall speed, accelerating as they went there. Ask any demolitions expert. There is only one way a building falls at an accelerated pace, and that is through pyrotech, through bombs,
that's not
through
true.
or what do you call it? Thermal fucking, you know what I'm talking about. You know, I could show you a video right now.
Show it to me.
Okay.
Tell me what this fraud is trying to teach me.
The flames on the South Tower, which appear to be getting lesser and lesser, is where the smoke is getting progressively lighter and lighter, indicating that the fire officials are getting closer to putting this fire out.
But then, about 7 minutes before its final destruction, almost an hour after the plane hit, molten metal was seen coming out of the northeast corner near the 80th floor.
Oh.
The red-yellow metal poured from the tower along with a shower of sparks, and looked like steel in a foundry. And there were many eyewitnesses that described molten steel.
You'd get down below.
Listen.
Molten steel. Molten steel running down the channel rails.
What does that say?
Later,
we
learned of very small spheres of iron found all through the dust. That iron must have been molten.
Listen.
I just want to see where he's from.
Looked like steel in a foundry.
Is he a firefighter?
And there were many eyewitnesses that described molten steel.
Listen.
You'd get down below and you'd see molten steel. Molten steel running down the channel rails.
Later,
firefighter.
we learned of very small spheres of iron found all through the dust. That iron must have been molten, allowing surface tension to pull it into those spheres. NASA took photos indicating very high temperatures days after the event.
This is what I was
Firewise professors were perplexed by melting of steel beams. And so we have direct video evidence, eyewitness accounts, forensic evidence, photographic evidence, and tangible evidence, all corroborating temperatures high enough to melt steel.
We have uncorrelated
the media told us
assumptions made by
the
a fraud.
intense fire, more than the impact, that the maximum air temperatures was about 1,800 degrees or 1,000 degrees
Yeah, I
cold
said that.
must have been used
Here's
as
some more
magnetic
evidence for you.
material, must have been used as part of the tower's demolition.
No, it wasn't.
Thermite is a mix of iron oxide and aluminum.
Here's your explanation.
Thermate is a mix of thermite, barium nitrate, and sulfur.
Okay.
But NIST ignored much of the evidence of molten iron or steel. They provided their own theory for that yellow metal pouring from the tower. NIST understood that molten aluminum is silver, not red-yellow. So NIST developed a theory to explain the color issue, stating, the molten metal was very likely mixed with large amount of hot, partially burned, solid organic materials, such as furniture, carpet, partitions, and computers,
That's what I was
which
saying.
can display an orange glow, much like the logs burning in a fireplace.
Exactly.
But there's a problem. Office materials like furniture, carpet, partitions, and computers are less dense and won't mix. They'll float on molten aluminum, like this coin on liquid mercury, and then burn off at those temperatures.
For 2
and
seconds.
steel at those temperatures won't melt and would sink, and therefore won't mix with the molten aluminum.
Oh yeah,
NIST never conducted any experiments to confirm their theory, but others did.
Neither
Dr.
did you.
Stephen Jones proved the NIST molten aluminum and furniture mix theory wrong.
Stephen Jones.
Then
The guy
an
who
independent
ultra
peer-reviewed
intelligent
report was
scientist.
published.
An independent
which found
peer-reviewed
explosive red-gray chips all through the dust.
Shut up and listen.
Which found
His peer review.
Then an independent peer-reviewed report was published which found
His
explosive
peer
red-gray chips all through the dust and positively identified as nano-thermite or super-thermite.
He's
Unlike conventional
uneducated.
thermite,
You can't peer
this stuff
review
is a very
yourself, Nick. What are you
high-tech
talking
explosive.
about?
He did.
No, you can't do that, dude. That's not what peer review
This
means.
stuff is a very high-tech explosive and confirmed what the independent scientists had been saying all along. And let's listen to an eyewitness who was there.
I was on the 81st floor.
I was on the 81st floor.
It just, I had 40 people in there, just an explosion. There's a light flash out my window, my whole doorway to the entrance of my office blew open.
It looked like a bomb went off in the lobby. You know,
Looked like.
something. It wasn't from the jet fuel. No,
way.
Shut up.
The ladies that are with me were in the World Trade Center in the first building and escaped through the lobby, where they report they believe there was a bomb in the lobby.
The bomb hit the lobby first, and a couple of seconds in the first plane.
Shut up.
I mean, I know people that got killed in the basement. I know people that got broken legs in the basement. People that got reconstructive surgery because the walls hit them in the face.
At the time, I was actually in the subway heading towards the World Trade Center right around Franklin Street. And after the first explosion, the subway station started to fill with smoke. The subway car started to fill with smoke.
That at the same time, 2 planes hit the building. That the FBI most likely thinks that there was a car or truck packed with explosives underneath the buildings, which also exploded at the same time and brought both of them down.
Reason to believe that one of the explosions at the World Trade Center may have been caused by a van that was parked in the building that may have had some type of explosive device in it.
I spoke to the chief of safety for the New York City Fire Department. We received word of the possibility of a secondary device. There was another bomb going off.
Shut up.
There was another explosion which took place.
Everybody's saying the same fucking thing.
Not everybody. Devices that were.
Oh, this is just the press.
There
was 118 documented.
The 4 press people, we're gonna call them the press. Should I pull up the other?
No, I'm just showing you the mainstream media.
million?
Because if they buried 118 eyewitness testimonies of people who the first responders, that's just first responders saying there was explosions. Okay. That's not even the people who were in the buildings. You have hundreds more reporting the same thing. There was massive amount of explosions, that there was bombs going off. There was people in the lobby before the second plane hit saying there was bombs going off in that building. In the basement, there was glass all over the building. Okay. There's absolutely inexplicable anomalies with the narrative that was fed to the public. Ridiculous.
There is an anomaly, and all believers, if you want to believe it, I'll let you. I'll just bring up the numbers. There's around 112,000 people, including first responders and victims in 9/11, involved in the whole collapse and the saving of it and helping people and all of that.
Okay.
We have 100. Just wait. We how many did you say? 112 of them were eyewitnesses to
No,
this?
I said 100. No, I said 118 documented testimonies from first responders alone.
Okay. Let's just say
people like the firefighter you just saw saying, what they experienced when they went in.
So that is hold on, we're just counting percentages real quick.
Dude, it's just first responders.
Hold on. We're just doing some math. 0.00, we have 0.1% of the people claimed one thing. 99.9% claimed the other. So yeah, sure.
No, what do you mean?
If you want to believe them, go ahead.
Anyway,
I'll be happy with that.
So there's hundreds of people who say the same thing. Reports of bombs going off in the subway, in the basement, in the buildings, all over the buildings. You can find them.
Why didn't you mention
even though they tried to hide them, like they disposed of the steel? You can still find them. They're all over. A lot of them have been released. So
wait a minute. You went from 118 to hundreds?
I'm saying
rather quick.
118 was first responders alone. But there's also hundreds of people, like the woman you saw in the news report, saying the same thing about the bomb went off went off in the building first before the plane ever hit. You have a lot of people saying that. You'll find hundreds of eyewitness testimony.
Them crazy.
We use 9/11 as an excuse to go into the Middle East. I mean, it was a great excuse. Everybody was all for it, but we went to Afghanistan, and then we needed a reason to go into Iraq. Okay. Afghanistan was never going to be enough. We wanted that position. We had a lot of reasons, plus the money laundering, the amount of money you can spend when you go to war. Whew. Now we're talking, baby. Now we can start printing money, and that's what this is always about.
You're saying this is what it's about?
Well, one of the best reasons to go to war is to make money. Clearly, we learned that in World War II.
If you're a defense company.
But
not if you're the government, you're spending.
The other thing,
like a couple trillion.
It was revealed in 2008 that the CIA had destroyed all videotaped interrogation of Al-Qaeda operatives when they asked them about 9/11. And
you know why?
The 9/11 commissioners, Thomas Keane and Lee Hamilton, wrote in New York Times. There was an article about how they had repeatedly requested those interrogation tapes for the 9/11 Commission report, and that the CIA's destruction of them should have been considered obstruction. Now,
and then Obama
why would they
even locked them
destroy
out.
those tapes?
So there's a really easy reason for this. It's because it's just like foreign relations, foreign affairs. The thought, and this is pretty public at this point, is that a lot of the interrogations, a lot of the evidence pointed to Saudi Arabia having a big link here. The problem is that if a public report comes out from this like multi-year government investigation that Saudi Arabia had like for sure caused this event, that's going to cause a major problem with this giant oil country. That's
you think?
Putin. Yeah, so that makes sense why they're blocking it. It's just politics. Like,
I mean, it makes sense why they
but
destroyed the steel, why they got rid of the pesky steel.
They didn't. There's no proof.
Why they tried to keep 118 first responder testimony of bombs going off in the buildings besides the planes.
118 out of 112,000
of first responders alone. 112,000 first responders. Nick?
It's still probably 0.01%.
There's two other things. I want to show you some testimony that was also left out of the 9/11 Commission by the Secretary of Transportation at that time, whose name was Norman Mineta. Really, really well-spoken, innocent guy. Clearly, somebody forgot to tell him to keep his fucking mouth shut because and when you see him, you'll kind of understand why. I think they forgot. But he was actually with Dick Cheney the morning of 9/11. He just happened to be
clearly not important enough
in his office.
During the time that the airplane coming in to the Pentagon, there was a young man who would come in and say to the vice president, the plane is 50 miles out. The plane is 30 miles out. And when it got down to the plane is 10 miles out, the young man also said to the vice president, do the orders still stand? And the vice president turned and whipped his neck around and said, of course the orders still stand. Have you heard anything to the contrary? Well, at the time I didn't know what all that meant. And
the flight you're referring to is the
flight that came into the Pentagon.
Oops.
So Faust, before you explain, I already have the explanation.
Oh, that one that crashed into the Pentagon? The order still stand to let it.
Oh, is that what you're taking it to be? No, bullshit. What they're talking about is Dick Cheney enacting an emergency order. What he was planning on doing is having 2 fighter jets attack the plane. People think that it had that his plan was to fire a missile at the plane, but that wasn't his plan. His plan was to get 2 fighter jets to actually push the plane. But and it's true, he did say order this. Yeah, order this right now. Of course it stands. But by the time that he ordered it, it had already been too late and they weren't able to anticipate it. That's what they're talking about. This isn't, oh yeah, order it to attack the Pentagon. No, they
the fucking plane was blown out of the air.
No, they didn't. They just nitpicked a conversation with some guy who was inside the plane with Dick Cheney. May I add the fact that Dick Cheney was in the White House when the first plane attacked. Their mindset is, okay, gotta get the vice president out immediately. They get him out. This guy's with him. The dude's like, hey, are you still ordering that thing? Yeah, obviously. If a plane's headed at us, push it out of the sky. That's what they're talking about. And please show me evidence that says otherwise, because this is
Nick,
just some like...
There's no evidence because it's been obliterated, Nick.
No, there isn't. Show the extended speech. They cut it after 44 seconds.
Hunter,
that speech is longer than
I want
that.
I want you at this time to show footage of the wreckage at the Pentagon. I want you to show footage of wreckage of the field in Pennsylvania. And then I want you to show actual plane wreckages and what they look like when they crash. I want people to see the stark difference between when a plane crashes and those 2 alleged plane crashes where there was no wreckage. There was a literal smoking hole in the ground. Okay. When planes wreck, there are things like seats, bodies strewn everywhere. Debris, fires. There was none of that in any of these fucking it's a joke. It's a literal joke. You have to be a complete fucking moron to think that this is a plane wreck. Wait a minute. I didn't make a video of this. Oh, wait, I can get it. Hold on a second. I can do it. I can do it.
Is it another guy talking about stuff?
So this is fascinating because 9/11. Okay.
After the military, he developed and operated the largest civilian intelligence agency in the world.
The world's largest and most successful civilian intelligence gathering operation in the world. Which makes me privy to an awful lot of information that none of you will ever see.
In other words, he was very credible. The following clip is from his radio program, The Hour of the Time, which aired on the night of June 28, 2001, 76 days before 9/11 happened.
Oh, shit. A CNN reporter found Osama bin Laden, took a television camera crew with him, went into Osama bin Laden's hideout, interviewed him and his top leadership, his top lieutenants and colonels, generals.
None of them have killed anyone yet. They're normal people.
This is a CNN reporter with a camera crew. And he came out and told everybody, within 3 weeks, Osama bin Laden is going to attack the United States and Israel.
Obviously, he's famous now.
Now, don't you think that's kind of strange, folks?
No. It's called media.
Shut up! You see, because the largest intelligence apparatus in the world, with the biggest budget in the history of the world, has been looking for Osama bin Laden for years and years and years, and can't find him. And whatever is going to happen that they're going to blame on Osama bin Laden, don't you even believe it. When in hell are all you people going to wake up?
Oh, not be silent.
I can't get my computer to stop this. Stop it.
I just want everyone to recognize that I had to be muted. I had to be muted.
I just wanted to hear what he said.
You know that you're dropping facts when you're muted by the believers.
Anyway, I wanted you guys to hear that uninterrupted. Dude, this was the longest Believers versus Skeptics ever.
And the greatest one. How do you feel disintegrating into dust? You're like Spider-Man, that scene from Avengers. You're like, Nick.
That was Avengers. That wasn't Spider-Man. Oh, you mean when he disintegrated, when he was on another planet? No, it feels good. I love disintegrating.
He was on Earth. I just want to say.
No, this was fun. This was real. I get you guys. I have no idea. You're gonna have to leave comments and let Nick know how much Kool-Aid he must still be drinking in order to believe what he believes.
Guys, honestly, if you're still here and you're not on my side, I can recommend some good community colleges. If you even need to go back to high school, like, we don't even need to, like, just I'll put it flat. Let me close it out this way. Faust, hypothetical situations that could potentially happen. Nick, facts. Science, physics, evidence. Faust! Oh, here's this random guy who said this stuff and compared it to fires. 12
all verifiable.
Fires. 118 eyewitness accounts. Nick,
listen.
112,000 accounts.
We're going to include an array of impressive video links for you in the video description, but we want to hear from you guys. We want to hear what you thought of the episode and who you think won this debate. Who do you think?
And if it's not obvious to you,
presented more evidence. And also, if you are not subscribed, for God's sakes, subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss any episodes, and check out our other videos. We appreciate you tuning in. We love our listeners, and thank you guys so much for tuning in to episode 4 of Believers vs. Skeptics, the truth about 911. Nick, it's been real, buddy. Have a good Friday night, and I'm gonna go smoke a joint and maybe play some Halo or something.
You can go cry. I won't blame
I'm
you.
gonna go cry myself to sleep. No, it's been real.
He said it. He said it. He
Peace,
said, don't cut
peace
that
on
out.
earth,
Don't cut that out.
everyone.
He said it.
Love you guys.
Peace.